What is going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in. Once again, this is Uncontrolled Opposition. I am your host, Robbie Yeager, and we are sitting here on the MCSC network right here live on YouTube. So before we get into today's show, I wanted to I was looking around the internet and I was trying to find some content, really something that not a whole lot of other people were going to be covering today. And I came across this crazy report by Open Secrets, and it's pretty extensive. So, we're going to go through it pretty much in depth, because just the depth of this influence of these lobbyists, these corporate lobbyists, is it's sickening, quite honestly with you. And we've always known, for years and years and years, that obviously lobbyists are a huge problem and they basically do run the government. But just seeing the numbers put in front of you just from the last couple of years, it's frightening. And what's also funny is that given all this power that they have, they're still getting butthurt over, proposing corporate lobby bans for future administrations, which we'll get into that as well, because the hypocrisy. I'm sorry, I'm just so worked up over it. The hypocrisy is crazy. And really, not everybody really knows, they know, but they don't know. Like we said, it's not a secret that lobbyists run this government, but just seeing, how deep it goes is crazy. And we're also going to get into something that I notice every single time, that it happens. And we'll get into a discussion about I wouldn't say the entire left. I wouldn't say the progressive left, because most progressives I know and I interact with actually act like that, right? They actually act like it. They actually hold on to their values that they say mean something to them. But there is a large section of, I would just say, the liberal left, your standard Democrat, Biden supporter, Harris supporter, whatnot. Definitely Harris supporters. Because anybody that saw the interactions with Tulsi Gabbard and Gabbard supporters and Harris supporters during the primary, they can tell you just how low Harris supporters will go in order to smear someone. But that section of the Democratic Party, of the Democratic wing, the shaming that they do to Melania Trump, it's kind of sick, really. And it's like a weird obsession that they have. And we're going to compare that. I'm not really going to compare it to how Michelle Obama was treated, but we'll have a discussion about, the we go low, you go high, and how liberals are kind of wasting Michelle Obama's message to begin with. And it's just all one giant ball of hypocrisy. And then also we'll touch on the big story of today, or at least one of the more talked about stories of the day, and that would be Nancy Pelosi calling basically for a cancellation of the debate, saying that she doesn't believe that Joe Biden should debate President Trump because she doesn't want to legitimize having a conversation with him, or whatever the fuck that means. But I've got my own thoughts on that. We'll get on that in a little bit. But first, I want to jump into this giant article by Open Secrets. This is going to take up the majority. We're going to, like I said, we're going to read through this article. And basically, this is it. COVID lobbying, how former aides to Trump and congressional leaders lobbied their bosses amid the pandemic. So this is, once again, this is a report by the Center for Responsive Politics, or as you know them as opensecrets.org. It was published on August 19th. So as President Donald Trump, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell negotiated the legislative response to the COVID-19 pandemic, their former aides lobbied them on behalf of deep-pocketed companies. Over 1,000 clients dispatched lobbyists with close ties to the White House or congressional leaders during the first half of 2020. About 40% of those clients reported lobbying on issues related to the pandemic. Pharmaceutical companies that received massive windfalls from the federal government to swiftly develop COVID-19 vaccines deployed Washington insiders. So did firms tasked with producing ventilators, and businesses in hard-hit industries angling for government aid. Companies that had not lobbied during the Trump administration or ever before signed contracts with K Street firms. The vast majority of these clients are businesses or trade associations, which make up nearly 90% of lobbying spending this year. The success of revolving door lobbyists indicates that powerful interests saw former aides to top officials as their best chance to influence high-level negotiations that mostly sidelined rank and file lawmakers. Now, this is a quick graphic right here. Now, if you kept up with that, that's basically saying that, hey, the pandemic has caused an all-time spike in lobbying. And 40 of the 1,000 clients dispatched lobbyists with close ties to the White House or congressional leaders. And for those that don't know, I mean, that's like one of America's greatest pastimes, is that you work on a campaign, a successful campaign. You work under say you work for Nancy Pelosi, you're one of her, staffers or a senior aide for quite some time. But, you want to move on from just working for Nancy Pelosi. Say you want to, be a lobbyist. Well, that's the best way to do it, is to build up rep with a politician, then join a lobbying firm. So then you can turn around and go back to lobby the same politician that you just worked for on behalf of a corporation that more than likely this person either takes donations from or has investments in. But so here's a quick graphic of lobbyists who used to work for President Donald Trump and congressional leaders, lobbied for over 1,000 clients during the first half of 2020. There were 551 clients that hired Trump-tied lobbyists. 154 of those clients dispatched those lobbyists on issues related to COVID-19. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, 232 clients hired Pelosi-tied lobbyists. Clients dispatched 115 of those lobbyists on issues related to COVID-19. And the list goes on and on. We got McConnell, 275 clients hired McConnell-tied lobbyists. 127 clients hired Schumer-tied lobbyists. And 151 clients hired Kevin McCarthy-tied lobbyists. So that's just showing you right now is that they know that the easiest way to get the ear of an elected official is just to send a lobbyist down there, because quite honestly, they get what they want 9 times out of 10, as you'll see as we get further into this article. Let's see here. Skip down. During the early stages of the pandemic, leaders of both parties came together to pass the $2.2 trillion CARES Act, which delivered aid to businesses, hospitals, and unemployed workers, among its many provisions. Overall, lobbying spending reached an all-time high in the first 3 months of 2020 as powerful companies scrambled to get their voices heard in high-level negotiations. House Democrats passed the $3 trillion HEROES Act in May, drawing another course of lobbying activity. Republicans refused to vote on that legislation in the Senate, but did not pass their own stimulus bill. Over 4,400 clients reported lobbying on issues related to COVID-19, and near record numbers of clients reported lobbying on the 2 biggest bills meant to address the crisis. And that's basically saying that here, the CARES Act and the HEROES Act, bills meant to address the damage caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, are the 2nd and 4th most lobbied bills of all time by number of clients. 1,939 clients for the CARES Act, 1,280 clients for the HEROES Act. That is insane. That is an insane amount of, basically, blood-sucking sycophants trying to squeeze their way into your politicians' doors at the same time. And look, I mean, this is the thing, guys, is that they spend so much time communicating with lobbyists and listening to the interests of corporate America, because corporate America has the financial, the backing to make sure that their voices get heard. They have the connections, obviously, of people that you need to get Nancy Pelosi to pay attention to something. Well, first of all, a good thing would be to donate to her campaign or donate to her victory fund. And another thing would be to throw hundreds of thousands of dollars at lobbying an issue that she's front and center on, or that she's got pull with. And Nancy Pelosi has pull with just about everything in the Democratic Party because she's Speaker of the House. Well, how do you do that? Again, you hire somebody that used to work for her. How do you get the Trump administration to listen to you? You hire lobbyists from a firm that were started by a guy that used to be in his campaign. It's that simple. And it's happening right here in front of us at record speed. But when they're listening to these people and they're spending all these all this time listening to these lobbyists, you know who they're not listening to? You or me or the people that are out here really needing help. I mean, hell, right now they're not listening to anybody. They're on vacation. So they're a bunch of psychopaths. Seriously. But, they spend so much time with these lobbyists, they don't have any time for you and I. That's why corporations always get what they want, and that's why people like you and I get screwed over in the end. But as it continues, lobbying spending broke records in the first quarter, but declined to its lowest level since Trump took office in the second quarter from April through June as legislation stalled. Lobbying by the energy and natural resources sector dropped by 21% year over year after energy companies lost out in the first stimulus package. And we can see that also by, basically the fall of Exxon, who was once one of the largest companies in the world. And now it's getting kicked out of the Dow Jones Industrial Average because, it's not in trouble of going under, but it's just a steady decline that, while there may be issues in the world and there may be issues with astroturf environmental movements, all in all, the war against oil companies, it's not over. But the money is saying that things are moving in the proper direction. We just have to keep up the pressure. But that's a different discussion. The bump and receive. Here we go. Ballard Partners led the way, bringing in 39 clients that are new to lobbying. Florida power player and Trump fundraiser Brian Ballard didn't lobby on the federal level until after Trump took office. Now he represents 123 clients, more than any other lobbyist, and his firm has catapulted its way into the top 10 highest paid firms by increasing its revenue every year. Ballard chaired Trump's joint fundraising committee in 2016 and served as vice chairman of Trump's inaugural committee. And he's tasked with raising money for the president's reelection effort and the Republican National Convention. His extensive ties to Trump make him one of the go-to lobbyists for anyone attempting to influence the executive branch policy. His new clients included TL Management, a nursing home company owned by Trump donor Eliezer Schreiner. The company received over $27 million in COVID-19 grants and loans despite allowing poor living conditions amid the pandemic. TL Management spent $165,000 lobbying Congress and the Trump administration in the second quarter after never hiring lobbyists before. Ballard had his share of high-profile clients before the pandemic hit, including Amazon, Boeing, Geo Group, H&R Block, Uber, and LabCorp. His services were particularly helpful for General Motors when Trump ordered the car maker to produce ventilators for the U.S. government. General Motors lobbied the White House with Ballard and Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General and one of Trump's lawyers during the impeachment trial. You see the connections here? The company also hired former Representative John Sweeney, a former Trump campaign and transition team aide, and paid him $50,000 in the second quarter to lobby the president's office on, quote, implementation of the Defense Production Act relating to the emergency mass production of ventilators for COVID-19 treatment. Trump invoked the Defense Production Act in late March to spur General Motors to start producing ventilators and went to Twitter to accuse the company of ripping off the government. However, Trump did little to enforce the order and later reversed course and praised the car maker. In April, General Motors signed a $490 million contract with the federal government to produce ventilators. Its partner in the expansive operation, Ventec Life System, hired lobbyists this year for the first time since Trump took office and spent $230,000. What you're seeing is companies knowing if they have the right connections and they spend and they want to break the bread out, they'll get what they want from the federal government. General Electric's healthcare units, which received a $64 million contract to build ventilators, spent $230,000 on lobbying through the first half of the year after spending $40,000 through all of 2019. The parent company employs lobbyists tied to Trump, McConnell, and Pelosi. I mean, it's just like shooting fish in a barrel. Before Maryland vaccine developer Novavax received a $1.6 billion federal government contract in July to fast-track a COVID-19 vaccine, it increased its lobbying spending fivefold in the second quarter to dispatch lobbyists from Feiger, Drinker et al. To the White House and its team, including Sarah Lloyd Stevenson, a former Trump administration official who has advised the White House's Domestic Policy Council. The lobbying filing said Stevenson did not lobby executive branch officials. Okay, but that doesn't, honestly, do we really feel like if you're going to hire somebody's firm that used to work for the Trump administration, you're going to lobby the Trump administration? Are we going to expect this person to not be involved in the discussions? I mean, come on. There's something called shadow lobbyists. And the way that is that, you know what? There are certain people that when they interact with government officials for a certain amount of time, they have to file that time basically with the U.S. government, because that's technically lobbying. But if a certain amount of time that you spend doesn't meet that threshold, like discussing policy, it's a really arbitrary rule. Like, you don't have to register as a lobbyist. So like if you spent like an hour with Nancy Pelosi and you only discussed policy for like 15 minutes, then you technically wouldn't have to register as a lobbyist. That's called shadow lobbying. And it happens all the time. And quite honestly, these kinds of regulations are obviously a joke, like 100% a joke. They're never really enforced. Nobody ever gets in trouble for breaking any of these rules. And it's like nobody cares. But this is one of the most important issues in our government right now, is that corporations know that they grab the right lobbyist firm, they get the right connections, which they're everywhere. And then, all they got to do is get in the office. Oh, hey, man, how's it going? We used to work together. Oh, yeah, cool. Here's what we want. And they get it. They're showing you. Open Secrets right here is showing you that they get it over and over and over again. They spend the money. They make the donations. They hire the lobbyists. They get the contracts. The government just gives them what they want over and over and over again. But we can't hire lobbyists. And this is the point. We cannot hire lobbyists because we're not corporations. Like, we could if we were like a millionaire or something, but like by and large, we're just citizens. Our only voice is our vote. But they can't hear our vote or our voice because it's being drowned out by the thousands of lobbyists beating down their door every single day. Lobbyists that used to work for them. They used to work. They have working relationships with the politicians that they're lobbying. Again, that's why corporations get stuff done, and we're left with scraps. We're left with nothing. Let's see here. Pfizer received the $2 billion contract under the program to deliver 100 million doses of its COVID-19 vaccine. As one of the biggest industry players, the firm retains lobbyists closely tied to the president and congressional leaders. They include Jeff Miller, vice president of Trump's inaugural committee and a well-connected fundraiser who has bundled millions of dollars for Trump's re-election campaign. His firm, Miller Strategies, didn't even exist until Trump took office, yet it rakes in more money each year. And Miller's firm had its best quarter from April through June with $3.4 million in revenue. And that's another thing, is that this is almost like, a giant, it's like a career boosting thing for these guys. Like, they know that working for a campaign is, unless you're working for like a high profile campaign, it's not really going to get you financially what you want. But they do know this, that working for a campaign, even a mid-tier campaign for a decent amount of time, will open the door for you to become a very successful and lucrative lobbyist. And I mean, because let's just face it, those lobbyist checks are way bigger than what you're going to be making as like a senior staffer for, just some mid-tier politician. Even though, a higher tier politician, I mean, it's all government jobs. You're capped. You're not gonna get rich unless you're like, Nancy Pelosi or somebody, or one of these politicians that already had wealth and they play the stock market, and that's how their wealth accumulates. When we ask, well, how government salary is only this, how are they worth millions of dollars in this time? Well, it's, they're playing the market because they get inside information. That's just how that goes. But these people, these lobbyists know, hey, if I work for Trump for a while, get my face out there, get my name out there, I can start my own lobbyist firm and say I used to work for Trump. And all of these defense contractor companies and all these oil companies and everybody are going to be like, hey, well, you used to work for Trump. How about you go talk to him and his assistants and, stuff about this, that, and the third. It's a great sales pitch. And now this guy's becoming a multi-millionaire in a very short amount of time because of lobbying. Like, Jesus, man. And, look, this article, I could go on forever and ever and ever. Probably even going longer than a lot of people might have wanted. But, please go on opensecrets.org, read this full article. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And just seeing the numbers about, how much these companies are paying, who they're connected to, or, the lobbying firms they're hiring and who they're connected to, and the results they're getting. It's not just about them. It's not just about them spending the money on lobbying. What it's about is that them spending the money on lobbying and still getting results. They're getting what they want. So the lobbying is working. So the lobbying spending is increasing because corporations are seeing that the lobbying is working. And that trend is just going to continue to go up and up and up. Like we said, Trump had passed that ban on lobbyists for 5 years, but I mean, when's the last time you've heard about that being enforced? It's been a really long time, maybe not even ever, because it was just something that, like most politicians, it was just something that was said to appease, basically independents that may have concerns about campaign finance reform. But it's obviously not being enforced because we're seeing the turnover. We're seeing these lobbyists getting everything they want, hand over foot. And you know what? Speaking of that kind of brings me to my next thing I wanted to talk about. But this is from The Hill. I saw this yesterday. Black organizations getting mad about the lobbying firms getting mad at this ban and the potential Biden administration. A battle is brewing on K Street over an effort by progressives to ensure a Biden administration is devoid of any former Wall Street executives or corporate lobbyists. Black and Latino lobbyists say a ban of that sort would end up shutting out minorities and could make the administration less diverse if Democrats win back the White House. I'm going to stop right there. I want to make my position 100% clear on this. Yes, the administration obviously needs to be diverse. The more diverse, the better. However, and I feel like that goes without saying, right? But however, that's not the type of diversity that we're talking about when we say a diverse administration. You can have Black and Latino and, Asian American and everyone. You can have these, people in the administration. Everybody can be included in the administration. What says that they have to be a lobbyist? That's my thing. That's not the type of diversity we need. We don't need a bunch of diverse lobbyists in an administration. I'm sorry. There should be people that you can be in politics and not have to be a lobbyist. I feel like this is just such a disingenuous take. Shutting out minorities? Absolutely not. What says why are the only minorities that you hire have a history in lobbying or being a Wall Street executive? Why can't you just find, good, well-meaning, smart people that didn't work in these fields? Again, this is just lobbyists using what they do. I mean, this is what they do. They talk and, they twist the facts to get what they want. And quite honestly, that's what the person speaking in this article is doing right now. It's fucking crazy because, I mean, that's obviously not the case. Not hiring lobbyists is going to make the administration less diverse. Give me a break. It's a cop-out. Tensions date back to April when 8 progressive groups wrote a letter calling on former Vice President Joe Biden to vow not to appoint any, quote, current or former Wall Street executives or corporate lobbyists or people affiliated with the fossil fuel, health insurance, or private prison corporations to his transition team, cabinet, or as top aides. That demand did not sit well with some minority lobbyists who argue that corporate lobbyists shouldn't be denied a spot in the administration. Quote, given the wokeness of these people, I find it odd they are so comfortable lumping a large group of people together. They have an agenda that is limiting, and it has always been limiting, said Michael Williams, founder of the Williams Group, one of the few Black-owned lobby shops in D.C. Williams served as special assistant for legislative affairs to former President Clinton. Of course he did. You want to talk about wokeness of these people? It's not, we just went over an article and I'm barely really scratched the surface of it. That showed you why we need a corporate lobbying ban as far as administration posts are concerned. I mean, it's that obvious because they get what they want. They already run things from the outside. And saying what we said, earlier with, having the right connections and hiring the proper lobbying firm that is run by people that used to work for the Trump administration or whatever administration or politician you're lobbying. Well, their whole, their staff, the people that you're lobbying, the people you're actually speaking to, they used to be lobbyists too. They know all the same people you know. It's just, we are completely cut out of the process, okay? As normal citizens, we're completely cut out. And again, corporations and Wall Street get everything they want because they have the power of lobbying that we don't. They have louder voices. They have more voices than we do. So this is just absurd doublespeak coming from a lobbyist, which is, again, what they are supposed to do. So, I mean, can you blame them for sounding like that? I mean, no. I mean, it's second nature to these guys, lobbyists. They talk out their ass the whole time. Biden hasn't made any promises with regards to a proposed ban. Here's a big news flash for you folks. He won't. And even if he does make a promise, it won't matter because you can almost bet your ass there is going to be some lobbyists in that administration. I mean, that's just the most obvious thing. Vice President Biden has made it clear that he's going to make it a priority to clean up Trump's mess by putting in place tough safeguards against the sort of rampant cronyism and lobbyist influence we've seen over the last 4 years, even as Biden ensures that his administration staffing reflects America's diversity, which Biden's spokesman Michael Gwynn said. Did you hear anything in that whole word salad about a lobbying ban? No, absolutely not. Because you're not going to get it. We're not going to get it. You're not going to get the fossil fuel subsidies ban, and we're not going to get a corporate lobbying ban for the administration. We're not going to get campaign finance reform. You're not going to get marijuana legalization or reform. Just the list goes on and on of things we're obviously not going to get. Nicole Venable, a lobbyist at Invariant, we'll talk about them for a sec, criticized the effort by progressives, saying their goal to have a Biden administration filled with staff reflecting all of America is undercut by these types of restrictions. Oh, God. Quote, the new administration will have their hands tied behind their back if they can only consider people who have either never worked in government or who have no experience in the private sector. You want a mix of staffers who have government experience, been, quote, downtown in trade associations, who have corporate experience, or some who have it all, she told The Hill in an email. For one thing, in government, or have no experience in the private sector. What about a lobbying ban says anything about not hiring people that have never worked in government? It's not the same thing that people were asking for. We didn't say you couldn't hire nobody that's never worked for other campaigns or that has never worked in government. I mean, obviously, experience is a prerequisite for almost any career. But who said that? Just exclude lobbyists from that. I mean, is that complicated to think about? I didn't think it was. But then again, this is a lobbyist for Invariant, right? Um, you know who runs Invariant? You know who founded that, right? Uh, her name is Heather Podesta, and she is the sister of lobbyist Tony Podesta, and of course everybody's favorite, uh, John Podesta. Yeah, she's a Podesta. Uh, you know, that's the company, and by the way, she's one of the DCCCs and the DSCCs. She's probably bumped, over the last year. They don't want to get cut out of the Biden administration because they're doing all this work for. We want more power, dude. We're doing all this for you so you could pay us back whenever you win. That was the whole purpose behind like the Clinton Foundation, right? They knew that another run was going to happen, so they, hey, let's pump all this money through here. It didn't work out, and ever since Hillary Clinton, has basically been a thing of the past, so has the foundation. Like its revenues have dropped by, almost, what is it, like 75%? That was the whole purpose. That's the whole purpose of all of these billionaires and lobbyists going through the party, to try to, bundle all these donations and get all these influences, because obviously they want something out of it. When Heather Podesta, obviously the founder of Invariant Lobbying, bundles $300,000 for your party, and then she lobbies you guys on a piece of legislation, she's going to be looking at you like, hey, throw me a bone. Look at what I've done for you. Then, of course, this goes on, to kind of, what's funny is that other groups that signed the letter include Justice Democrats and Sunrise Movement, as if Sunrise Movement gives a shit about money in politics after taking, the $500,000 from the 16th. God, they piss me off so much. Well, if we have time, we'll circle back to them because, their grift is 100% real. But I mean, look, this is an obvious thing. Of course, lobbyists are going to, if Joe Biden was to win, of course we want lobbyists out of there. And of course, lobbyists are going to be upset about it, but they're so entitled, man. Like, we just got through, like, reading an article before that talking about how, how lobbyists is like an all-time high, and how it's at like all-time high effectively. They're getting everything they want. They're making all this money. And then you start mentioning the fact that they could be taken out of their positions of power, and they start whining, and they start running to the press and talking all types of shit. And it's kind of like, for one thing, we're talking about a Biden administration. You have nothing to worry about. Nothing will fundamentally change. This has been established. But it's just the audacity. It's like, oh, well, if you cut out all of these lobbyists, then, you're going to be cutting out on the diversity of a future administration. How disingenuous is that? And this, guys, we're in a world of shit with all of this, with Biden and Trump, and regardless, because lobbyists own this country, and they're going to continue to own this country for the foreseeable future until we get actual, real, decisive campaign finance reform legislation. And as long as both major parties are benefiting from that legislation, or benefiting from the current rules as far as campaign finance goes, they have no incentive to change it. So we're in deep, deep shit when it comes to that. So another thing I wanted to talk about, something that I've been seeing, obviously, over the course of the Trump presidency, and how not just the media covers it, but how us as a social media and independent media cover the first lady, right? And there's like, look, I might get shat on a little bit for this, but it's bothersome. And it was bothersome when it was happening during the Obama administration, and it's bothersome now. More so if you consider yourself a progressive, or somebody, or even if you were just you're run-of-the-mill standard Democrat, and you call yourself a liberal, you call yourself, part of the party of, women's rights, and, equality and all of this happy horse shit that, they say they stand for, but we all know that it's just pandering for votes 9 times out of 10. The liberals' obsession with, it's tempting to call it slut shaming Melania Trump, but that would be incorrect because posing nude, believe it or not, does not make one a slut. So I feel like that's an improper term. Like, is it body shaming? I feel like that's probably the closest thing to it. But anytime she speaks, anytime she does anything, I mean, literally, she renovated the Rose Garden. And you know what? I'm not a landscaper. I'm not an expert. I think that, whatever they want to do with it, it's not going to change my life. So I don't really have that much time to worry about the Rose Garden. But of course, she gets shit on for everything she does, right? And that's to be expected. But it's the constant calling. I see liberals calling her a whore, calling her a fucking, like, a glorified call girl, and, talking all this. It's like some of the most disgusting shit. And, somebody that also supported Tulsi Gabbard during the primaries. And if I've got any of my fellow past Gabbard supporters in the show right now, you can attest that anytime you would say that you supported Tulsi Gabbard, you would get obviously the standard Russian stuff, Assad, apologist bullshit. But then you'd also get like, oh, you're a Tulsa, you just want to bang her. Oh, you just think she's hot. Oh, she's a, blah, blah, blah. They do the same crap to Melania Trump. And considering the platform that you're supposed to stand for as a liberal or someone on the left, and especially as progressives, I hate when I see progressives do it. For one thing, sex work that's not what she did. But since we're on the subject, the way that most liberals talk about Melania Trump is very telling of how they feel about sex workers in general. And I'm not saying that that's what she did. She was a nude model she modeled nude, right? That says nothing about her character. And it's not a detriment or anything. And for, by and large, so many people that consider themselves or claim to be on the left or claim to be on, better than their Trump supporting counterparts, saying the most disgusting things about this woman, it's gross. Like, it just is. I don't know how. I mean, I'm not trying to cape for her either, but it's just something that we need to realize is that, hypocrisy is everywhere, especially whenever we're talking about, rhetoric in both parties. But here's the thing. As someone that considers himself on the left side of the spectrum, and somebody that considers himself a progressive, and somebody that wants to move not just, the major parties to the left, which I know is an impossible task given the corruption. But, I think it's better if we can try to be self-aware with what we're talking about, especially as, former Democrats, or, if you're somebody that just left the party, or if you're trying to get your friends out of that neoliberal #resistance mindset and to start actually practicing what they preach. Because Michelle Obama is revered by most, obviously hardcore liberals, hardcore Democrats. She's revered by them, for, just being classy, eloquently speaking. And, look, we can all have our qualms with the stuff that the initiatives that they push. Not everybody was a fan of Michelle Obama's, school lunch initiatives and stuff like that. Just like not everybody's a fan of Melania Trump's Be Best initiative and stuff. That's all fair, okay? That's fair game. And Melania goes through, being called a whore and stuff. It's the same way that Michelle Obama was going through multiple racist, attacks and epithets thrown at her as well. But here's the difference between that. Those white supremacists that were, being so racist towards Michelle Obama, they still exist today. And you're acting just like them in a way. whenever you slander, Trump's wife. Because here's the thing about first ladies, and maybe this is just my opinion on the position of being a first lady, is that you may be involved in politics by proxy, but you're not a politician 9 times out of 10. Like when you look at Hillary Clinton's career, lots of stuff to complain about, right? Lots of stuff to criticize. Most of that didn't come from her time as first lady. Most of that comes from her time as senator and her time as secretary of state, in her time, campaigning, for president, and the stuff she would say during those periods. Michelle Obama wasn't a politician. Melania Trump is not a politician. And I don't really think that it's fair that we always just have to go so hard on the first ladies, because quite honest with you, their husbands are the ones that are making all the decisions. Their husbands are the ones that deserve all the scrutiny. In the case of Melania Trump, it just never, to me, it's never really seemed like Melania has ever really been like a willing participant. Like, she was married to a businessman who decided on, presumably a whim, that he wanted to run for president one day. And I don't know about you guys, but Donald Trump doesn't really strike me as a man that listens to his wife's input all that much. So whenever he decided to run for president, I'm pretty sure there was little to nothing she was going to be able to do about it. So she was either go along for the ride or not. And, of course, we know what happened. But she's been very reserved. She stays out of the limelight almost all the time. She rarely comes out and says anything. Now, look, yes, I know she just spoke at the RNC. And I know she's caping for her husband. She's campaigning for her husband. And that's why I say that the first ladies in our country's history, by and large, are not politicians, but they are involved in politics. Of course, they're going to campaign for their husband. Of course, they're going to get up on stage and speak nice things about their husband. That's to be, and look, she's obviously she's obviously conservative. Just like, you can disagree with her on stuff like that. That's 100% fine. There's nobody saying that you can't. But when Michelle Obama gets up on stage and says, when you go low, when they go low, we go high, and then you turn around and call Melania Trump a whore because she posed nude in a couple of magazines, like, give me a break. That's not only for somebody that you hold in such high regard, being Michelle Obama. How can you're wasting her message, for one. Do you think she would approve of that kind of stuff? I mean, liberals, stay on message, because you're making yourself look foolish. You spent this whole time calling Trump supporters deplorable, and now we're shaming. We've got enough balls to start shaming women who pose nude in magazines. Hell, and we all know for a fact, though, given the Democratic hypocrisy that runs so hard, if Melania Trump was married to a Democratic politician, she would be exalted like a figurehead. She would be their platform. So look, I mean, I just noticed it, and it happens every time. Liberals never miss an opportunity to do this. Every time she speaks, anytime you get on Twitter and Melania Trump is, even trending or anywhere in the news, you're going to see those pictures, because liberals never hesitate to pull them motherfuckers out. It's fantastic. But actually, no, it's quite disgusting. And last but not least today, obviously the big story, not the big story, but story that a lot of people have been talking about. That's going to be Nancy Pelosi calling for an end to the debates, essentially, because she doesn't think that she should encourage legitimizing a conversation or legitimizing the president in general, which is absolutely absurd. For one thing, we know why Pelosi doesn't want there to be a debate, and that's because Trump's going to destroy Joe Biden in a debate. That's not even going to be a problem. And it has less to do with Trump being right about stuff and almost everything to do with Joe Biden just not remembering what he ate for breakfast that morning. And if he gets up on stage with Donald Trump is going to eat him breakfast. He's going to tear him up because Biden is pathetic. His onstage presence is pathetic. And you know, his recall is just non-existent. And I just don't see how he's going to get through a 3-hour debate against one of the, I'm not going to say one of the fiercest debaters, because Trump's not really a fierce debater. He's a name caller, but he gets that soundbite. He gets that one-liner, that insult, boom, boom, boom. You know, that's all anybody's ever going to remember. They're not going to remember the bullshit he's talking about. They're going to remember the one-liner that he got Joe Biden with. Or they're going to remember the night full of one-liners, because that's exactly what it's going to be. It's going to be a beatdown. And, of course, Biden, but see, here's the thing. Biden has to debate, right? He's got to, or else he looks totally weak, 100% weak. And, you know, Pelosi looks like a weakling for coming out and even suggesting that this should be the case, because it's so obvious. There's no reasons to not have a debate, even with COVID. You can have that debate. You can put them up on stage together, just keep them 6 feet apart, make them wear masks, do the whole 9 yards, whatever. But you can get that debate going. There's no reason not to. Well, there's reasons not to. If you're Biden, it's going to be, look, that's why this election is nowhere near over. For one thing, I don't really look at polls. I don't really put much stock into polls, because I feel like they are usually worthless. And 2016 proved that. Because honestly, anybody that believed polls, that still believes the polls after what happened in 2016, I don't know what to tell you, because they got made to all look like fools. And some of them are interesting, though. The outliers are interesting. And there's a couple of things that are pointing towards Trump actually having more success than what people think he might. And one of those is, you know, he has got a +10 on independents right now. As far as CBS just released a poll that had Trump up +10 on independents. And as we all know, that independents determine the outcome of elections. And, you know, be that as it may, if Trump pulls a +10, Joe Biden has no shot. But another thing that's going to be happening soon, that could possibly change the entire course of the election and reverse these polls that everybody's been holding up, saying, see, look, Trump's in trouble. He might be, because this COVID thing has not worked out politically to his advantage. He hasn't been able to sit here and say that he's been able to recover the economy. He can say that he's recovered the stock market, but the stock market isn't not the economy, and is not reflective of the economy. But when he gets to that debate, his numbers are going to jump, because he's going to get out there and destroy Joe Biden. Joe Biden's going to be stammering his ass off and not be able to get accurate points across. Trump's going to be misleading, of course, but he's going to hit Biden where it hurts. And he's going to make Biden, I think more importantly, he's going to make Biden look inadequate as a leader, and as somebody with the physical presence to kind of command respect in a room full of other alpha dogs, in a room full of world leaders. Maybe in the past he could have had that, but just now he's too brittle, he's too frail. He just does not have that in him. And Trump's going to expose that 100% come debate time. And so, of course, Nancy Pelosi doesn't want Trump to debate him. But she said, she uses the word legitimize. Like she does not want, she doesn't want to legitimize President Trump. I'm sorry. You guys already did that. And y'all continue to do it every single day. For one thing, Trump was legitimized in 2015 during the Republican primaries by the Democrats, by the Clinton campaign. They're the ones that legitimized Trump in the first place because of the Pied Piper strategy. Their entire strategy was to essentially elevate Donald Trump with Republicans to legitimize Donald Trump with Republican voters to hopefully make him become the nominee, because they, like fools, thought that he would be the easiest to beat. So they helped. Like, that was the strategy. Legitimize Trump. It worked, just not the way they wanted it to. But even going a bit further with that, Pelosi wants to talk about not legitimizing the president. During the whole impeachment bullshit, during all the Russiagate bullshit, during all of the Ukraine gate, during all of it, you know what Democrats were doing? They were passing all of Trump's legislation, passing his defense budgets, passing his trade deals. Hell, they were even serving our rights to him up on a silver platter, extending the Patriot Act. Democrats did that. How was he the most dangerous president in history in one breath, and then in the next breath, you're signing on to all of his legislations? That doesn't make any sense to me. But it legitimizes him. It legitimizes him whenever you vote for his legislation, when you co-sign his rhetoric, when you say, hey, you know what? Those hundreds of billions of dollars, nah, I don't feel like fighting for it to reallocate them to the public health. Let's just keep them in the defense budget. Let's keep giving them the Raytheon. That sounds good to me. So yeah, I mean, Pelosi is blowing smoke out of her ass right now. There is nothing in this world that legitimized Trump more than the Democratic Party over the last 4 years. So guess what, Nancy? You don't got to worry about a debate at this point. It's far too late. You guys did that job, because it's at the point now where you might get another 4 years because of total incompetence, and because you needed to run a populist agenda with a strong candidate. You did neither. And now you might get smacked up for it. Look, the economy drives the elections. We all know this. Trump was going to win in a landslide, and I mean a landslide, had COVID-19 not really screwed the economy up. And, I feel like both parties are trying to lose this election because, with the pandemic destroying the economy the way that it did, this was a great opportunity for anybody, in the Democratic Party to step up and say, hey, any discussion that does not include Medicare for all is a discussion that we shouldn't be having. Like, this needs to be a priority, right? We need an injection of capital into the citizens, not to the corporations. We need, some safeguards, for one, that we didn't have before, and we should have gotten sooner. And, we need help. People need help. People need health care. And, this was a perfect opportunity for Democrats to use that as the platform. No, we'll veto Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic. Because what that tells you is that we don't really care about the base. We just want to let's just run on the fact that we're not Trump. Well, whenever you get on the debate stage, being not Trump isn't going to be enough. You're going to be asked questions about policy. You're going to have to answer. And you're not going to be able to speak over, a Pete Buttigieg this time. There's not going to be 13 people. It's just going to be you and Trump. And what are you going to do? You're going to look like trash. But both parties are trying to lose this election. It's not even close. I mean, the Democrats refuse to run on a platform that actually benefits voters on the left, stuff that they want, like I said, like Medicare for all. Voters want that. That's overwhelmingly been proven, even by people that doesn't believe polls like me. I can look at those numbers and say, okay, yeah, seems like there's a trend. But the right, you're running on the fact that Joe Biden is going to turn this country into a socialist country. Do you guys even know what socialism is? I don't think so. Painting Biden as a Marxist? Jesus Christ. Oh my God. Like, let's just make the stupidest argument possible. They don't need neither one of these. Like, they're both trying to lose. This is completely a joke, and we're in big trouble. But thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of Uncontrolled Opposition. If you missed the entire free live stream right here on YouTube, the episodes will be loaded up to Rockfin. Just sign up to rockfin.com to become a premium member. But until the next time I see you guys, you keep doing what you do. I'll keep doing what I do. You guys take it easy.